We're with the governor of the great state of Michigan, Rick Snyder, and he is in campaign mode right now, campaigning for a way to fix the roads in the state. He's going to be questioned by my colleagues, Charlie LeDuff and Charlie Langton. Governor, good to have you here.
It's always great to be with you, and I'd like to kick it off if it's okay, Huel, because I want to present you guys
something. That's funny
with
the boot there.
Kick it off.
There's
a lot of weight in those kicks too these days. So, but one of the things is, and I need one more piece for you guys, but this is for you.
Oh, I got plenty around my house.
No,
see
these
my
are actually
axle.
parts of a Michigan bridge.
Wow.
And this illustrates the point of why May 5th is so important. This is the kind of thing falling off our bridges. And then when you drive around and you see that plywood underneath a bridge, that's what it's holding up.
But Governor, look at this thing. I mean, you talk about this, chunks of concrete. Isn't this really a scare tactic to get the voters to vote yes on Proposal 1?
No, it's the facts. I mean, factually, wouldn't you want to know that pieces of concrete are falling off a bridge or not?
Well, we've had reports of pieces like this falling through windshields.
And that's a small
years.
piece.
No question about it. And we know that in rare cases, drivers have been injured, have been hurt by falling pieces of concrete and by potholes in the road. But the question is, Governor, how do we pay for it? The legislature and you cobbled together a huge proposal that on paper seemed to work, but what is amazing is that members of your own party seem to be fighting you on this 1-cent tax increase. Well,
in any political case, you're going to have some people not liking it, and I think I've got strong support from a lot of people that are Republicans, a lot of people that are Democrats, and a lot of independents. This isn't a partisan issue. In fact, Huel, as part of the process, the ballot proposal required a 2/3 vote of both chambers. So we had strong bipartisan support from the legislature to do this in terms of this whole method to get safer roads in Michigan.
And then some Republicans turned right around and started campaigns to defeat this proposal. Many of your opponents say, yes, they want the roads repaired too, but they don't want it repaired with this kind of proposal that raises $1 billion+, but all of the money does not go to repairing the roads. It goes to other entities as well.
Well, I'm happy to talk about it. That's why I want to join you today, because I'm happy to take on the objections. That's the best way to deal with something like this, is you just be open to
Good, I got a few
good questions.
So explain it, and I'll
to
tell
begin
you.
with, though, if you stop and think about it, this is actually something that simplifies what we have today. Because what we have a system today of is we have 19 cents a gallon at the pump that goes to transportation. In addition to that, though, and many people don't know this, is our retail sales tax, that 6% sales tax you pay on everything else, is on our fuels. To be blunt, when citizens learn that, they typically don't like that fact, and they shouldn't really. So what this proposal does is say, let's have everything at the pump go to transportation. That actually simplifies
Right,
things.
that's it.
And so we're adding about 23 cents more that will go, that's that $1.2 billion to go to transportation at the pump. Now the challenge is if you simply leave that and leave the retail sales tax, our gas prices become a lot higher than the rest of the country. We would be 20-some cents higher than most everyone else, which is a problem. So we want to eliminate the retail sales tax, and when you do that, you create a hole in the school and local government budgets, other places.
That get funded out of the gas.
That get funded with that retail sales tax currently.
Right.
So we have to backfill that problem. And the easiest, simplest way to do that is to say, let's go from 6 to 7% on the retail sales tax.
To capture that money that was lost.
Yeah, and in fact, that makes them whole, and there are some additional resources, but there are good investment areas to use those resources for.
So
this is where it's actually simplifying and smart.
You just jumped over a big part. If you wanted to make up what you lost at the pump, you'd need a 0.5% sales tax increase. You're talking a whole percent, which is about $800 million. Now, me, the middle class, you, the middle, you're hitting us with a huge hidden tax increase. Why? When corporations, just last month, $9 million negative corporations paid to the state. We paid them. They didn't pay us. Why don't they pay something? Why do I got to pay for every damn thing in this state?
Yeah, well, statewide, our revenues are working out well, corporate and otherwise. If you look at the whole year, Charlie, in terms of good revenue coming in, our economy is doing well.
Very
but when
well.
you talk about those additional...
The budget is not.
Well, when you talk about those additional revenues that would be going to schools and locals, let's talk about that. Because the other piece that's part of that equation is there's some tax relief for lower income people.
True enough.
Yeah.
But not for me and for everybody struggling with all these taxes.
Well, for the lower income piece, again, there's people getting relief there because that was important. The local government piece really brings us back to whole, kind of with the cuts that were made to revenue sharing back in 2011. And for the education piece, there are some additional dollars going to the school aid fund, But one of the things that we'll now be able to look at for the school aid fund is career tech education, the skilled trades. And I think if you go across Michigan, if you want to get people all rallying behind an issue, it's actually increasing the skilled trades because those are good, well-paying jobs.
But Governor, are you raising more money by increasing the sales tax than you need to fill that gap lost under the old proposal?
There is some incremental additional revenue, and that's where I was just walking through those pieces, though, and that was part of the work together to say, how do we come with something that both parties, both chambers could agree to get a 2/3 vote.
So does that mean that if I vote yes, I will be paying more at the pump and more when I buy things?
Well, again, there is a tax increase as part of this, but it's something that's overdue. We spend $1 billion less than Ohio does on transportation.
True enough. Why do you have to drive on these dangerous roads to come do this show when we elect people to do the tough things and pass the laws and put your name on the record and balance the budget? I mean, you didn't even support this. You just said, put it on the gas and let's move forward. Now we got this whole show.
I've been on the record since 2012.
Agreed.
About
and they should be
more
fixed.
revenue. So I've been very clear about that. The issue here, Charlie, was the fact that if we wanted to backfill that issue for schools and local government in particular, and you want to look at increasing the retail sales tax, that requires a constitutional amendment. The legislature cannot do that on their own. And in fact, when people say they walked away from their responsibility, they didn't, because it took a 2/3 vote of both chambers to put it on the ballot. And if you go and you talk about Republicans and Democrats, this had broad bipartisan support from the legislators. And if you talk to legislative leadership, they'll tell you they're behind this proposal from both parties.
And yet we see in the polls that apparently the public is not right now. They are not entirely convinced.
Well, this is part of the discussion, and it's not just that. Again, there are other issues. We need to explain to people how this money will be used smartly, too. Because sometimes the other objections you normally get, just to be open, is one, you'll say, is this money really going to go to true fixes of the roads? And one of the challenges we've been underinvesting in our roads for a lot of years. Now we'll have the appropriate dollars. As part of this package, it increases the warranties that we're going to do for roads. It increases the requirements for competitive bidding. It requires preventive maintenance programs to ensure these dollars go to real fixes of the roads. This goes to really requiring it, and if not, the contractors are going to have to pay the repairs.
Why wouldn't the
on roads with warranties?
Why wouldn't the contractors have to pay now? Weren't there warranties when they built these roads way back when?
Actually, in many cases, no, Charlie. And in fact, people always wonder where Michigan's at. Michigan's a leader. We have started doing warranties several years ago in Michigan, but nationally, that's not a well-done phenomenon. It's not very common to see road warranties going on. And Michigan leads the nation in having more road warranties than any other state.
You can't tell it, but I certainly drive
So,
down
I don't know, but this just shows that,
responsible.
again, we are trying to do those. The other question people quite often ask is to say, find the money someplace else in the budget. But as a practical matter, I can tell you, and I think you know me well enough, I'm fairly fiscally conservative and I know how to do good budgets, that the last several years we've devoted general fund dollars, which traditionally was not done for transportation, somewhere between $100 and $300 and some million. So we stretched to find those additional dollars, but the farthest we got was about $300 million. That's not 1.2 to solve this problem. That's why we need the additional revenue.
I'm a dope, but I can count. So again, under your administration, the GOP-led legislature, we gave corporations and business $2 billion in tax cuts. Couldn't we give them $1 billion in tax cuts, raise it up a little bit, and pay for it that way? Can the business community chip in and start paying for the state?
Well, they're still paying a significant tax. Actually, we improved their system.
But again, last month it was negative revenue.
Well, that was because refunds hit. The same thing can happen with other taxes. So it's not good to look at 1 month. You have to look at a year.
Governor.
In terms of looking at revenue. And in fact, look at the jobs being created in our state. We're doing very well. We have the lowest unemployment since 2002 in Michigan today.
So that's a no?
That would be a no.
Part of this bill, though, you're going to pay off debt that was borrowed years ago to fix the roads, and look at the good job they did there. So, and it's quite a bit of money in the first 2 years, if I'm correct. If this passes, when will we really see real improvement where this $1.2 billion can go to the roads?
Yeah, another great question, Charlie. One of the features that was added that I strongly supported was paying down this debt. Because one of the problems we had that sort of hid this problem is back in 2003 or so, the state went out and borrowed over $1 billion. Borrowed the money. So it wasn't a structural fix. It was just a short-term kind of patch it over kind of thing. And the debt service on that currently is running about $100 million a year.
What's the percentage on it?
It's a relatively low percentage, but again, $100 million a year in debt service is not something to ignore. So what we do is be able to pay down this debt. And it would free up these dollars to then go to road repairs. So it actually helps the $1.2 billion, because part of those dollars today are going to debt service, not repairing our roads. So that's important. The second part of your question, though, Charlie, is if this passes in May, we're going to be ready to move on some projects, and we will do more road projects this summer than we would otherwise do if we can get this passed.
But if it doesn't pass, is there a plan B?
No.
Bottom line.
To be blunt, yeah. No, and I'm always a plan A, plan B kind of guy, typically. I'm the guy that sort of coined that phrase up in Lansing. And if you looked at it, this was a real question, and that was the challenge legislatively. This was a good compromise. It's good policy, though. And the option was to otherwise do nothing. Doing nothing is terrible. So if you said, would you rather have a situation where you just say, hey, we're just going to watch our roads continue to go downhill, or we're going to have to work hard, get out there and talk to people, get a ballot proposal done, and get safer roads? I'm ready to go to work.
But you don't even have the state attorney general on your side. You don't have Republican colleagues supporting you the way they should, the way you might think that the governor, the Republican governor of the state of Michigan, could win their support.
Well, this again is not about partisanship. I'm really proud of the Safe Roads Yes coalition. It has over 100 members, and I encourage people to go to saferoadsyes.com to get more information, because there's 100 groups there plus that includes the business community, the Small Business Association of Michigan, many chambers. Then on the union side, there are many unions, the firefighters, the police officers, the operating engineers, the laborers, the teachers. This is fabulous. This is the kind of coalition that's Michigan. We should be proud.
What about
of
me, the guy?
You're welcome to join
those
the
are all
coalition.
special
I'll sign
interests,
up today.
but it's coming out of these pockets. I'm dying on the vine. I don't even know what government I'm paying for anymore. I just feel alienated from it. Like they're not really feeling me. The schools stink, and I pay through the nose. The roads stink, and I pay through the nose. I pay through the nose for everything. And what's in it for my daughter? And I'm trying to be a good member of this community, and I know a lot of people out there are like that.
Charlie,
just fed up.
No, I appreciate that, and there are some good reasons why people got those feelings over a lot of years. But that's what we've been systematically doing in Michigan, is taking on those tough problems and solving them. I mean, look at the issue of getting Detroit on a financially stable basis. In the last few years since I've been governor, we've taken $20 billion of debt off the books, and we've got a payment plan to pay that long-term debt. So we're being more responsible for your daughter and her kids. Those are the kind of measures we're doing today that are solving long-term structural problems. That one of my commitments as governor is I wasn't going to leave the old problems for the next person. We're stepping up to take them on, and one of those is this roads issue, this transportation issue. We deserve safer roads, and this has been ignored for far too long.
That's no doubt.
Well, look, while you're here, let's address some other issues too. There has been a young man who has taken it upon himself to test Michigan's open carry laws. This man has strapped a rifle on his shoulder, put another on his hip, and he has gone walking in Madison Heights toward Lampere High School. Parents have been calling police in a panic. 911, please, I'm worried about my children. And this guy shows up, but by law, by Michigan law, he can carry those guns, he can confront police, and they can do nothing to him. How can we, should we, tweak the laws so that, yes, we allow people their Second Amendment rights, but we don't allow people to scare children and parents?
Well, I think you said it well, Huel. That's a loophole in the law that existed before I became governor. Again, we need to respect the Second Amendment, but having open carry in schools is not a good idea. And I would encourage the legislature to do something about it. Are we going to get something as simple as just solving that, or are there other pieces of this legislation that make it more complicated? Well, so that's really the question.
The problem, though, with the Republican majority in Lansing, they seem to support the idea that this is the Wild Wild West. Yes, you can carry guns, and yes, you should be able to carry guns anyway. So when they come up with a bill, it will likely include some provision that allows them to carry guns wherever they want to. Would you sign that?
Well, again, I actually have dealt with legislation in the past. I've signed pieces and I've vetoed pieces of legislation in the past relating to guns. So that's some of the discussion we need to have. But again, we should address this open carry issue in schools, I believe.
You're not in favor of it?
No, I'm not in favor of it. Again, there's been prior legislation, but in some cases they wanted to increase concealed carry.
Yeah, and this
and
dude,
some of what conditions. So that's where you need to carefully balance these issues because you need to respect the Second Amendment.
This dude's a jerk. Well, don't come around my kid with a gun. If you want to carry a gun, go up to the legislature, see how they do. Or walk into the courthouse where there's cops. Don't bring around my kid. You agree?
Well, again, that's the challenge. That
I'm a gun owner.
We need to respect the Constitution and the laws, and one of the issues to solve this is to do legislation to deal with open carry.
Governor, a group of Democrats this week.
In that circumstance.
Governor, a group of Democrats this week just introduced a bill that would essentially legalize marijuana, make marijuana for recreational use similar to what they have in Colorado. I've been told that it could generate the state of Michigan $50 to perhaps $100 million of revenue. Would you support that?
Well, again, there's lots of discussion on marijuana. I don't jump to marijuana as one of our great economic opportunities. To be open with you, I'm spending my time on things like skilled trades, again, looking at important issues, transportation, and I appreciate people having a discussion on that. Longer term, I think we'll have a continuing dialogue, but for now, let's get better, safer roads in Michigan, and then let's work on putting more people to work in good, well-paying jobs.
What's the total state budget?
It depends what piece. Overall, it's over $50 billion.
$50 billion. So $100 million is peanuts. It's nothing.
$100 million is a lot of money.
Yeah, I'll take it.
And again, you take that stuff seriously, but you have to look at what are the other consequences to that. So it's what would happen to other state services, other requirements. So you don't look at just one part of the equation when you look at something like that.
Again, the Republican leaders like Paul Weld, seem to be in support of at least decriminalizing the use and growth of marijuana.
Well, let's move away from marijuana. One thing I would like the legislature, and I have been very supportive of this, is I think we need to do some criminal justice reforms. And I'm looking to do a presentation on that, a special message or a presentation in the next couple months or so on criminal justice. And I think sentencing reform needs to be part of that. I think there's an opportunity to do more alternatives, more interventions prior to people going off to incarceration. I think we need to look at things like prisoner reentry and improving that. So I think there are a number of things by still respecting victims and really understanding their rights were infringed and they were harmed.
If you legalize pot, you could half the jailhouse would go away.
Well, I'm not sure it would be in that magnitude, Charlie. But
it's up there.
Again, this is the issue. And if you look at many of the questions are mental health issues, other things that we can be more proactive on. And the good part is I think there's a lot of people in the legislature interested in also working on this topic. So I think that's something we could see real progress this year.
Meanwhile, as the country wrestles with gay marriage and love between people of the same sexes, the issue now before the Supreme Court, the state of Michigan is, I think, wrestling with the same issue, but you have some conservatives who believe that it is more important to give religious organizations, especially those that deal with adoption, to give those organizations the right to refuse to give children who have no parents to couples who happen to be of the same sex because their religious beliefs forbid it. What do you think on that issue?
Well, again, you have to do an appropriate balance. The key interest and issue when you're talking about adoption, from my perspective, is I want to see the most kids adopted possible. How do you get the most kids in a loving family? That should be the main goal, and that's my objective in looking at this. And I'm proud of our track record, Huel. One of the things is we've done very well in the last few years about increasing the number of kids getting adopted in Michigan as compared to how many are out there. It's up over 25 percentage points in terms of the number of adoptions, finding a loving family. So again, when you look at these issues, I appreciate the legislature looking at them, I'm in discussion with them, but when I'm doing this analysis, my issue is how do we get the most kids adopted by the
Do you yourself
loving
have a
families?
problem with children going to families of the same sex?
Well, again, I'm not going to get in the middle of all those kind of issues. My goal is to optimize the maximum number of kids getting with loving families.
No, don't get in the middle of it. Just whisper to me.
Because, again, we want these kids to be successful, and we've done a lot with foster care and other things, but let's get them in a forever family.
But so you have no objection to children going to gay couples, finding love and warmth
I
and a
don't
home
get in
with
the
gay
middle
children.
of things that people argue about, but don't we all agree we'd like to see the most kids adopted by the most loving families?
Absolutely.
Isn't that answer simple, though? Like, you just don't take public money and you don't have to answer to the public.
And again, there are agencies that don't, and they do their own thing.
So go do your own thing.
So
Because I've been married a long time, right? And after the honeymoon, it's pretty much all same-sex marriage.
Oh.
My wife hates when I say that.
He's here all week, folks. He's here all week.
He's back. He's back.
well, that's on the air. Good luck going home.
Maybe.
Also, before we go, I have to ask you about the Detroit public school system.
Yeah.
We have been through a succession of emergency managers. And yet, as we sit here today, we have less than half of the population in the Detroit public school system that we had a decade or more ago, and we are still in a deficit. And yet you've appointed yet another emergency manager. Does this mean that it's time to finally give control back to the local school board, because the succession of emergency managers, one after another, have done virtually nothing to solve the problem?
I wouldn't say that, Huel. They've done a lot of good things, but it's an extremely challenging problem. And I'm not happy with having a fourth emergency manager, and I've been very public about that. If you look at, though, the enrollment has stabilized in many fashions compared to the decline of prior years. Some programs have been reinstituted. There are some very good Detroit public schools. Again, we need to raise the level in all Detroit public schools. And one of the things I'm excited about, and I clearly encourage this, was the coalition effort going on now, really led by the Skillman Foundation, because I think we needed to look beyond just Detroit public schools. We need to look at education in Detroit, the EAA, charter schools, Detroit public schools, and say, how do we create an environment for the kids of Detroit where they can be more successful? They've done a tremendous amount of work. They're working on recommendations to get those wrapped up by the end of the month. I'm looking forward to seeing those. I hope I can incorporate a number of them in recommendations I'd like to take to the legislature to say, here are ways we can improve education in Detroit, potentially other challenge places in our state, to create a better environment for all the kids, which would allow DPS to be successful, charters, EAA. My goal is, how do we raise the bar for all schools, evenly and equally, so we can help the kids the most?
Does it mean that you'd like to put the mayor in charge of the school system?
Well, again, this is part of the coalition effort. They're going to look at a lot of different options and a lot of different alternatives to talk about, because as you know, if you talk to Detroiters, historically there was a fair amount of concern about the school board from Detroiters.
Absolutely.
Historically, the last emergency manager got a $50,000 bonus.
Yes, he did.
A $50,000 bonus before he left. Was that fiscally responsible?
Well, again, that was part of his contract and the arrangement. And again, he had goals to meet, and he met a number of goals.
But the point is, though, if all an emergency manager is going to do is simply cut, 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 you're going to end up with the same problem that you had when he started.
Well, that's where they not simply cut. They've reinstated a number of programs in terms of enrichment programs, music, athletics, in terms of working on those in a number of institutions. And there's more work to be done. Again, this is where I want to work with the community, though. That's why I clearly encourage the community coalition to come together to say, this shouldn't be the governor from Lansing bringing all these solutions. Let's work together and let's hear from the community.
What's the status with Wayne County, particularly the jail? What are you doing on that?
Well, they're still working on their deficit elimination plan, and I want to give credit to Warren Evans. He's building a team. They're being proactive. We've seen an uptick in positive implications and input on how they can be successful in Wayne County now.
Would you be willing to send money to Wayne County to upgrade the current jail facilities because they're a hellhole? Would you be willing to look at that?
Well, long term, they need a different solution. I still think.
I mean, short term.
I still think there's merit in Mound Road, though. Longer term.
Short term.
Your success, though, with Detroit has gained you national attention. People all over this country are looking at you, and some are mentioning your name as a possible vice presidential nominee. Would you consider that role?
I'm very happy being governor, and as you see, we've got a lot of important issues we're working on. We're getting them done. I've got an election on May 5th that I'm very supportive of, and let's keep moving Michigan forward.
Any of the current Republican candidates caught your eye?
Well, I think if you look at most likely it will be a governor, because I think governors have the most appropriate background for this kind of role. That's the closest to a chief executive for the country.
But if asked by Jeb Bush, would you say no?
Again, I don't do that speculation. I think it's great to say right now my focus is we have an election coming up. I just did an energy message on improving Michigan's energy policy.
Let me take care of it. Jeb, don't call. He's busy.
How's that leg of yours doing? Is it
improving?
Okay?
I'm going to get this boot off soon.
Well, fantastic. Well, Governor, as always, we appreciate you being here and tackling the tough issues. It's a very difficult job, and you are sometimes questioned by some very difficult reporters, but you do answer.
He's a lawyer.
He knows.
Again, Governor, thank you for
Great to be with you.
Appreciate it.